Hey, Sharon, you can start this whenever you want to.
Okay.
We'll just keep admitting people as they show up.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm Sharon Hirsch. I'm on the board of NDTDW, and I'm going to be the host for tonight's meeting. We're really excited about the presenters we have. Just a couple announcements first. If you're not on our newsletter list, please go to the website ndtdw.com and sign up for the regular communications from our group, so you'll find out what's going on, when we're going to have meetings, and other important information will be on there. So please do that. And we are also seeking for anyone who's a member of the group, a couple board members. We'd like to have a board secretary and also a general board member. I think most organizations are more successful, more vibrant, more long-lasting when you have new people coming onto the board with new ideas. And we would love to have a couple more folks join us. We meet on the second Monday of the month to do our planning. And in the chat box, I'll put the contact information that you can use to get a hold of us, or you can go on the website. There's a contact us button there, and you can fill that out as well. So we're super excited tonight to have Sherry Matula, and she is from Sisters United Alliance, and she has Diana Patino with her as well. Sherry is the founder of the organization, and I have some background information on it, but Sherry, I'm just going to let you run with this. I know that your mission is to empower women and to get those women who just aren't coming out to vote to get them to the ballot box. We all know that we leave far too many votes on the table because we just don't get people out and to be engaged. So Sherry, you've got the floor, and we did ask anyone who signed up if they had questions to submit them. We didn't get any questions, but if you are in the audience, please everybody stay muted so we don't interrupt Sherry, but put your questions in the chat box and we will follow up with those after Sherry's presentation. So take it away, Sherry.
Thank you. Well, of course, I'm going to start off with, folks, as we all know, this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. This is it. Everything has to be on the table to do that. And I know I've said this to Judy before and some others that you know, it just all has to be done. And we expanded a lot in, for those of y'all who are on our website, it has a lot of the stuff about where we came from, what we did. And we started in 2016 or right before that in Harris County, because in 2014, we had 25,000 women who were double or triple Ds. They had voted in either 2 or 3 Democratic primaries who didn't show up to vote. And that was 2014 with Wendy at the top. So we created Sisters United to target women who were voters, but they had, you know, registered to vote and they were voters, but they had not voted in the past 2 elections. And then we went from there to, in 2018, we expanded out to the surrounding counties, and we expanded our program where before it was 3 mailers to, we did 3 mailers plus digital plus, and we were one of the first ones to actually work on digital like we did, and then to do paid phones. And then in 2020, we expanded out 26 counties altogether, did all the urbans except for El Paso, and some of the what you would call suburban or urban X, including Denton and Collin, but they were all partial. And what we ran into in Dallas was we got some late funding, but we were only able to fund 10,000 targets out of the 95,000 targets that we actually had. And Diana's going to explain a little bit about how we targeted, but we did it in a late money program where we only use digital to actually target the women. And we got the late money in, and we're able to fund it with some funding too from Women of Dallas United in Action and some others to put it together. And it was only from October 20th until November 3rd. And folks, 95% of these women had never voted. And we turned out of the 10,000, over 3,000, almost 3,500. So you can imagine what we could have done with full funding on there. I mean, you multiply that times about 10, and that's how many voters we could have brought in Dallas County, about 30,000 or so. So, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. So this time, because we were so successful with the digital program, that's all we're doing this time. And as far as I know, we're the only program statewide that is actually doing this. And I know that I had been asked about two of the House district seats in particular, kind of very similar to what we had done before in 2020. And among those two, we have identified 4,773 women in House District 108. And we have identified 4,843 in House District 112. And out of that, that's 9,000, almost 10,000. It's 9,616. And I will tell you, there has been a little gift given to Dallas County from women in Massachusetts who have raised $10,000 already for you all. But pretend like it's not there. Okay, like we need, more of the funding. But I'm just telling you that they did. They decided that they wanted to do that, and so they have raised some. So we do have some already. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Diana, who is absolutely the best that you could ever have for a consultant and data person, so she can kind of explain how the digital works, what we're planning to do this time. So
thank you, Sherry. Good to be with you guys. Yes, so as Sherry mentioned, we're going to be full digital, and what that means is we're going to be targeting voters through their IP addresses. So don't think about Facebook, don't think about any other social media platform. These digital ads are the ones that you're reading an article and out of nowhere there's an ad that pops up. There's a video that pops up, right? So those are the type of digital ads that we are going to be doing. Those are more expensive, and the reason why is because they're micro-targeted. With a software that we have, we're able to match your voter registration address with your IP address, which is your internet connection. And once it gets matched after about 3 to 5 days, then we start deploying those digital ads. So those ads are only going to go to the type of voter, to the voter that we have selected. The difference with Facebook, let's say, it's that on Facebook, you cannot just do the micro-targeting. You can target by zip code, you can target by, they like this show, they like the show and things like that, but it's not a micro-targeted of a specific woman voter in this case. And there's others, digital ads also, that what they do, they do it geographically, but again, it's not micro-targeted. So what Sisters United does, we really talk to just the woman they will want to. And then what happens also throughout election day, we start getting the data from the county. We don't rely on, let's say, the voter file having the data already. Every time there's an election day for early voting, we get the data, we match it with our universe of the women that we're talking to, and then we start realizing how many of our women are turning out to vote. One, it helps us realize, how good we're doing or not doing, but then also we're able to, at the end of the first early vote week, then we just extract them from our database, so that way they don't keep getting digital ads, and we can spend that money on the women that are still not turning out to vote. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing this time. We have it planned to start the week before early voting and go full force and just digital. As Sherry said, last cycle that we did that pilot program, 27% turnout was huge. In any campaign, 20-25% turnout is already massive, let alone with low propensity women voters, and then also with just a digital program. In addition, I'm going to go ahead and mention we're doing actually a poll. We're going to be conducting a poll to really look into our women, what they're thinking, what's going to motivate them, what our message should be. Our message is always drafted at the last minute. I want to say, just because we always want to wait until the last minute to make sure we're actually talking about things that are mattering to them. So right now we're just going through different polls that we have. We're running different campaigns locally and things like that. But what Sisters and I wanted to do, since it is a very data-driven program, we're actually doing a poll to just the women that we're going to be talking to, and then we're going to just find the message and then start deploying those digital ads in static graphics and also on video for them to see. And this time around, also in addition to the video, to the digital, we're going to be going to connected TV. That means streaming TV. So there's a lot of people nowadays, including myself. I no longer have cable. I have streaming TV. So we're going to start collecting the women that have streaming TV, which happens to be within the sweet spot of our targets between 25 and 50, and just target them with literally commercials of Sisters United, pushing out the whole ticket to vote down the ballot for all Democrats and showing them election times, where to go vote, things like that. So they can also, it could be easy for them. So that's what we're going to be doing across the state. And I'll take any questions if you guys have any.
Yeah, there's some questions.
Yeah, Elaine is asking, so where do the ads show up? So just examples of where they might pop up when you're online or.
Sure. So the digital ad, literally the software really follows the voter. So wherever the voter is at, mainly in, let's say, articles, like Politico is one of those, they actually happen to, so I do this for different campaigns. In this primary election, I got a sample because every time with the software, I'm like, I want to get a list of all the websites where it popped up. And they always tell me it's impossible. The inventory is just humongous. So we can't really, but what I'm going to do with the vendor that I'm working with, they give me a sample of the top, 20, 25 websites. And it's amazing. I've been doing different campaigns at the same time. Every universe is completely different. And it could be Politico, it could be Washington, the New York Post, all kinds of the Houston Chronicle here locally. But then one thing very surprisingly, there's people that play games on their phone, like Tetris or like the puzzle word. They actually pop in there also. And there was one campaign in particular that was like the number 3 website or, site where they start populating, which means our voters somehow, they just kept on going there. So it is a variety of websites. And which at the end of the cycle, I just like to get a sample of them just to kind of get an idea of where our folks are. But that's kind of where they start popping up. It's just all kinds of websites, not Facebook, not Twitter, just random websites.
Great. Wanda's asking, do you use VAN for your targeting?
Yes. So everybody uses the voter file. We paid for it. It wasn't that cheap because we need the statewide access.
$15,000 we pay for that.
Yes. So we do the voter file, and within it, I do a whole analysis on the women and who to target, and we run different scores to make sure that we're using the right score, depending on DNC 2020, 2018, 2022, turnout DNC's, turnout score, things like that. We do random samples to make sure that it's accurate. And then after that, we'll just come up with the universe from the voter file.
And it's a very clean type of process. And along with that, then she starts about a year out. Diana does, and actually looks and continues. It's a fluid type of a thing, checking until right at the time that she has to release it or export it, having to do with the digital ads and stuff. So it's all a process that you go through to get the best data, the best connections, the best everything. And what Diana always reminds us too is that those digital ads are going to everybody on that network. So we can't even measure if it is going to other females that are on there because it's popping up too on them, other voters that are in the house and everything. This does pop up, on anybody else. So like Sharon, if you and I and a couple of other people were all at the same network, then we would all be getting that message. So.
Yeah, super effective. Lena asked, how can individuals contribute? And I know, Sherry, you put your website on here, sistersunitedalliance.com. How else can we help you?
It actually, to be very honest, right now, spreading the word to other people that telling them to go to the website to contribute. And on there, it tells if you want to send a check. And those of you all who know anything about PACs, we actually put our PAC together before we did Sisters United, and you'll love the name we have, Women in November, get it? So for when. But anyway, we're just a state GPAC. So it's unlimited, whoever wants to, give to us and everything. We're very tight kind of a process. We have tried to take out all the variables and all the other stuff. The only thing, of course, that we message is vote for all Democrats up and down the ballot. That has always been what our message has been, to do that. So we feel like we're in the right place at the right time to maximize what needs to be done during this very, very critical election. So
I have a question on the messaging
Sure.
piece. So if you're in House District 108, are you pushing the same message to those voters in terms of a specific candidate, or just vote for every candidate up and down the ballot that's Democrats? And then, and
it's
I'll
still
just ask
vote-
my other one too, like issue specific, or is it just basically?
issue- we try to narrow it down to one major type. Like we were the only ones last time in 2020 that did a general economic message having to do with what had happened to everybody during the pandemic. So you having to do all the stuff and everything. So we were kind of ahead of the curve with that. This time, of course, Sharon and the rest, the major thing that will be overriding what we're going to be doing, even coming out of the polls, has to do with the Dobbs decision and women and their health care, because we're women talking to women, and this is the major issue. Will we bleed in some other? Absolutely. But as far as we have found that it works to really drill in the message to vote all the way down the ballot for every single Democratic candidate in that county. And we have seen some really good results, of course, in Harris County and beyond with what has happened with that. And folks, we also had an interesting thing happen in 2018, which we hadn't even planned. The counties that we did in 2018, we didn't realize were in the 1st and the 14th Court of Appeals. So guess what? Our margins of 44,000 women that we turned out flipped the 1st and the 14th Court of Appeals. So, and we're looking at all that. We just have found, even among rural counties, among suburban or the urban X counties, and among the urbans like Dallas, the overriding message becomes that you're women talking to women. You're empowering women, and they want to know that you're all going out to vote together. And that's been a really good plus for what we do. So
Do you coordinate directly with campaigns? I'll ask you that. And then do you think the messaging, like that woman to woman messaging, is, I guess, complementary to whatever the campaigns are doing? I know there's so many organizations out there doing great work, trying to get people to get out there and vote. How do you see yourself as a complement to campaigns, or?
Diana?
So yes, and the reason also why Sisters United is started is because we're talking to women that are non-voters. They're not voting. So it's harder to sell them on a candidate, or even a candidate is harder to sell themselves on this woman, right? And often, and I used to be the executive director to the Harris County Democratic Party quite a few years ago, but I learned also that because of resources, labor, everything, you limit yourself to talking to usually the base. And campaigns usually do the same thing, right? If I want my client who's running for whatever position to win, I focus on who's turning out to vote. I don't really focus much on low propensity women, especially women that have voted maybe only once or never before. So the magic, in a way, of Sisters United is that, one, we're not affiliated, let's say, to the Democratic Party. So we're just a Sisters United Alliance group that is just here as a women's group to kind of show you why it is important to vote, and to train you, or to kind of hold your hand until election day. These women are not like us, that follow the news, that follow when it's election. Some of them, they don't even know early voting exists. So you have to hold their hand into the process of, like, there's an election happening. This is where you can vote. This is when it starts. Here's the resources, here's an email or a website or phone number where you can reach us, things like that. So the universe is really different from a just regular campaigns. I know, and also the other reason to, you know, to have Sisters United way when they started in 2016 was also to add more people to the electorate. In my opinion, we're not going to flip Texas until we get more people in the electorate, until we start engaging them. And there's great organizations and groups and everything that they do, the voter registration efforts, but then nothing happens to those women that just register and no one really talks to them. So someone is usually going to be a nonprofit or a different group like Sisters United, talk to those women that are just still not there. They have not bought 100% into a candidate or so. And so Sisters United kind of serves that purpose. And that's what we kind of get benefited on. We don't get lost in the message of, you know, like a candidate, like they get a little bit more in particular messages, particular issues or details. We are more about just showing them why it is important to vote and then just turn them out to vote.
The cost, everybody, because we're going to try to add in the streaming TV and the other stuff, is still going to run close to around $2 per. But now, Diana, correct me if I'm wrong, but there will be approximately 4 touches per day, or 4 of these coming up every day. So think about that. So you start right before early voting, okay, and you're talking about 4 of these or so every single day, you know, coming into, and you know, the amount of touches are just incredible when you think about that, and especially when you drop in the videos, or you're dropping into their you know, streaming TV and everything. It's beyond anything that you can imagine on a regular political ad basis or anything like that. And again, everything was created for that relationship. Sisters United Alliance, although I have to tell you a joke that there are some people who think that we were former nuns, okay? So I kind of do the joke that, okay, so to the people who are Catholics, then they would start to listen to us because they thought we were former nuns. And then as far as, you know, with the Black voters and stuff, the use of the word sisters and brothers is very consistent throughout when you're doing this. I mean, I just talked to the Black Women's PAC earlier today, and she was laughing about that. And I said, so who knew, okay, that we were doing that? And then the logo, you'll notice up in my screen, is a really pleasant kind of a coloring of a logo to catch the attention. And then the tagline of empowering women to vote. So all of this kind of combines together to start the process of reaching out with that relationship and everything. And so we're all joining together to go vote for Democrats, because we're recommending to them to vote for Democrats up and down the ballot.
Oh, that's great. You actually answered 2 questions that I had, was kind of like cost per was one of them, and how many touches. But I will just say that as someone who lost an election by 391 votes,
You knew.
which translates into like 10 votes per precinct, you realize how super important that is to just get every single vote out. So
and we wanted you in there so bad. I mean, I know I was Sharon, you know, we talked about that.
I know, total heartbreak. But anyway, I don't see any other questions. One thing I would love to do is to get a follow-up, because I know you have a target, you have a goal of how many people you want to bring out. I know it'll probably take you a little while to figure out after the election how those folks voted, and then report back to us on your success. Oh, I see another question here.
That's interesting. Being that I'm 71 years old, I started door knocking when I was 15 in Austin. Okay, and I've been in campaigns. Sharon and I have talked about this. I was in one of the top races in 2008 for a state rep race and stuff. It really depends. I really think that the best door knocking is done within the precinct by people that in that precinct know each other. Okay, I really think that is the most effective door knocking, and even phoning, because you're a neighbor to a neighbor. They've seen you, they know who you are. that I think is the most effective and could turn out more percentage. The problem is that it's very difficult nowadays to actually get precinct chairs who do have backup things. And so instead you have probably about a 10% open, you know, on the doors, and then the rest of them you leave something. Is there any follow-up to that, or there are phone calls that follow that up? It all depends on what's done with that. Ours, they can't help themselves. They're glued into their devices, no matter what age you are, just about, and what's happening. So we're going to keep popping up in front of them. There is no open. It's as long as their devices are on, we're going to be there. So, you know, it's just a whole different way to do things. So
I just
Well,
want to let everybody know that we are recording this meeting, and it will be up on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. And we'll be sending out to all of our mailing lists the information that it's coming out. And
yay.
of course, we're going to be praising your presentation and of course, putting up the contact information.
Thank you, Lena, because I mean, I'm just an old hand at this. You know, a lot of us have been around for a long time. We know what works, what doesn't work, what's more effective, what's not effective. You know, all of this, it depends. That's kind of like when we actually did the paid phones, we did it by paying a national phone center to do it, because they would continue to call and call and call and call and call, you know, on our dime. And so we knew that eventually some of them would answer. Did we have to use a local number? Absolutely. Did it need to come up on that phone as Sisters United Alliance? Absolutely. Everything has to be planned out and decided what is the most effective way to launch that. And I think we're all just kind of like, you know, for this election, what's going to happen, and do we have everything all covered? So.
Well, Sherry, we appreciate what you're doing, and Diana, we appreciate you so much. We look forward to hearing fantastic results after November 8th. You know, we're all praying, but everybody has to do their part, right? I think
Yes.
that strategy of everybody doing everything they can do is the winning strategy. So
we're a great investment right now, especially
That's
in
right.
Dallas County. And I will tell you, Sharon, that everybody who comes through from Dallas around there, of course, will be keeping track of it. In other words, so we will know exactly what it is. Diana, is there a possibility of doing a link just for Dallas County, kind of like we had done before? Is that possible to set that up? So if you set it up, then Sharon, we can send it to you all if you want to, or to Carol or whoever, or to Lena, because I've got her thing. We could actually set up one for Dallas. So
yeah, that would be great. Send it to Lena and she'll put it in the newsletter and on the website, and then we can track what our contributions are.
good.
That's great.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we look forward to hearing your winning message soon. Thank you. Okay, well, next we're going to go on to Nick Solorzano from the Dallas County Elections Office. We sent Nick, or Bob Franklin sent Nick a long list of things that we wanted to talk about. I know he is fully prepared, and get your questions ready for Nick. So you're up next. Thank you.
Hey, thank y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? Am I loud enough? Very good. Well, I'm Nick Solorzano. I'm the communications manager for Dallas County Elections Department. I've been here for about 9 months now. I'm really excited. I was born and raised in Dallas, but I went to Austin for school, and I've been down there for about 10 years doing political stuff and, yeah, getting a couple degrees and all that stuff. So I'm happy to be back home. But so I guess I'll start with, so kind of going down you know, Bob's list. You know, we talked about voter registration numbers. It's really big. And so starting off from there, first off, the deadline's October 11th. So if you know anyone that's not registered, October 11th is the deadline, and that's received here. We have to have your application received in our building by close of day, October 11th. Actually, no, we're going to stay here on October 11th. We're going to have a voter registration drive, and we're going to stay open as long as we can. Just to allow people to kind of come here in person to register if, you know, they haven't done it already. So that's kind of the first part of that. And so actually, you know what, and we'll talk about just registering. So when you're registering, the biggest problem we have, so let's take 2020. So in 2020,
Hey, Sherry.
Oh,
that was
you're
a very
good, boy. You're fast.
Hey, mute yourself.
in 2020 we had about 7,900 and it's about 7,900 rejected ballots because they were just not filled in completely. So someone sent us a registration form, took all the effort, they mailed it to us, and they were just incomplete. So we're kind of expecting somewhere around that line as well. And we reach back out to them, ask them to, fix the issue with it, send us another one. And we get about 49% that actually respond to that. So we get a pretty big chunk of people who send in a registration application, don't fill it out completely. And then only half of them take the time to send in another one or, finish the application. So we're just, reminding everyone to kind of take all the time you can, make sure you read that application, you fill it all out, put all your information numbers on there. Because so many people forget forget how many thousands it were that just didn't sign it. They filled everything out, they filled their address out, and then that very bottom X with the signature just didn't sign it. And so, as we're trying to get information campaigns out and as we're running ads and doing all that stuff, we're just very much doubling down on please, read all the forms carefully. There's a lot of forms, there's a lot of legalese. We understand it's, not the easiest process, but just, careful reading and filling everything out. And then so next on our list would be poll workers, how kind of, elections start. Elections all start with the proclamation from the governor ordering an election. And then we kind of go into our, work mode where we start putting on elections. And that kind of starts with, early on with voting locations, voting sites. We have 469 standard voting locations across Dallas County. And if you don't know, you can vote at any location. We used to be precinct banks a few years back. Now we're not. You can vote if you're going to visit friends in Mesquite, if you go to school in, DeSoto, if you're on your way to, Richardson, wherever you are, you can stop and hit one of our 469 locations. And so that's election day locations. Early vote this year, Bob can correct me, but we're looking at 52 early vote locations. And those will be open for, those 2 weeks prior to early voting. Our hours are changing a little bit with that. I think, that first week we'll be open 7 to 7. The last 2 days will be open 7 to 9. And so we're trying to stay open a little bit more, trying to encourage everyone to come out and early vote. If you wait till election day, there could be lines, there could be issues. Just, come and early vote at your most convenient location. Yeah, 52. I'm right. I'm pretty sure. So we start a lot with the locations. Bob is doing a lot with our voting sites team right now with contracts. We have to have the contract to use those locations. So whether it's a library or a community center, whether it's something like that, we have to enter into a contract that they'll stay open for these times, that we can get in the building pretty early because our judges set up, an hour before, and they're going to be there pretty late taking down and getting us back the results. So we enter into a contract saying we can be here for this long. We're going to be using it for these days, for these hours, have our equipment delivered. It's actually a very big lift. And I kind of took that for granted. I'm a political animal. I've spent my career in politics and working for elected officials down in Austin. And I did not know how much work and how many hours go into putting on these elections. It's pretty astounding. So once we get contracts, we can make our final vote list. That's a list we publish everywhere. You can go to these locations, these addresses, this room number, and come down and vote. After that, the next big lift is poll workers. We're an interesting organization. We have about 55 full-time employees here in Dallas County elections. And whenever an election comes around, if it's a major election like this upcoming November 8th one, we grow from a 55-person organization to about a 3,055-person organization. So for poll workers, we're going to have about 3,000 poll workers across those 469 locations. And they all have to be trained. So our training department right now is in high gear. Early vote judge training started on the 21st. So we've done a bunch of training classes in our new facility. I think our average class size right now is about 60 judges and clerks per class. So we're chugging along, and I think election day judge training and clerk training starts next Monday. So those class sizes are going to kind of even get bigger. So we have to train about 3,000, train and place about 3,000 election judges and clerks. And if anyone you know is interested, we pay pretty well for election, early vote and election day judges, and they can visit dallascountyvotes.org/become a poll worker. And we are always looking for help, especially when it comes to bilingual clerks. Our ballot and all of our materials are in 3 languages. They're in Spanish, English, and Vietnamese. So Vietnamese was recently required this year. So our ballots, all of our forms, everything we send out is in all 3 languages. But there is a real need for bilingual Vietnamese clerks. We do have a phone app. Each judge has an app on their phone, and it's a live interpreter. It comes on the screen that can interpret in over 50 languages. But it's just kind of a bit more difficult. It's another step. If we could place more Vietnamese bilingual clerks, it would be a little bit easier for those people to kind of come out and vote. And it's a growing population, so we're always looking for clerks and judges, especially bilingual ones. But yeah, dallascountyvotes.org/become a poll worker. That's going to be where you can go to get more information, see the pay rates, sign up, and then you'll get an email for, when to schedule your trainings and all that stuff. We have a pretty good process that we do for, we have to have a good process because we hire and train 3,000 people. And then after that, it's, we go into, after we train in place, early voting starts, which is early voting starts. First day is October 24th. Early voting starts, it runs to November 4th. And so, we're gearing up for that and just getting ready for early vote. I feel like I've been talking for a while. Is there any questions over any of that stuff so far?
Yeah, we actually have a few questions, so let's answer those and then you can go to the next part of your presentation.
Yeah.
Bob's asking, how effective are the volunteer deputy registrars?
Oh, they're super effective. So we have about 3,000. So if you don't know, a volunteer deputy registrar is someone who comes in, they volunteer to be a deputy registrar. And we train them on how to register voters. We give them a specific voter ID card that's specific to them. We train about, and it's every 2 years, even number of years, your registration expires. And so January of next year, because this year all of our registrations will expire and all of our VDRs will have to come back and go through training as required by the state. And they are a great group of people. We have about 300 very active VDRs that they go to so many events all across the county. Some, we'll do call outs if we have a big event. We did on September 20th was National Voter Registration Day. And we will call out our VDRs and say, hey, we're going to have a drive-through registration here. We're going to have other events across the county on that day to celebrate. Will you come help us? And we always get more than we ask for. And they're always very active on their own. They don't need to wait for us. They'll put on their own events. They'll do their own drives. Actually I went to North Park Mall. We had a table of just very active volunteer registrars there that had worked with North Park Mall to be there, and they're registering voters. I like to go by and just pretend I don't work for the county and see if all the information is accurate. It always is. They're a great group. They're well trained. We do, if you're interested in becoming a VDR, we do online classes and in-person classes. And we'll also, our voter outreach person is Esmeralda Garcia, and she's incredible. And she will train you here. She'll train you online. She will go wherever you are and meet small groups of people to train them the VDRs and get them their registration cards. But
So
yeah.
I'm wondering, are there fewer errors when you have a green card come in versus a white card from the mail?
Absolutely. There are 2 sets of eyes on it. And, one of them has been trained exactly what needs to be done. So yes, those green cards are pretty accurate.
Okay. Do you still need election workers?
Yes, we can always use election workers. Like I said, it's about 3,000. And sometimes things come up in life. You signed up a month or you went through training, you completely expected to become a poll worker, and then something happens and you just can't make it. So we always try to get more poll workers than we need. And it's getting a little bit harder with the economy the way it is to get workers, but we're doing it.
All right, very good. Marcia has a great question. When you move to Texas from another state and you have a temporary address, what IDs can you use for voting?
Oh man, that is a great question. So we have 7 forms of identification Class A, and there's another class B. And so of those 7 forms, it's your Texas drive. They're very specific on those 7 forms of valid ID, right? So it's like it has to be from DPS, it has to be federal, it has to be these forms of IDs to come vote. So if you're not on that list, so a Texas driver's license, Texas election certificate ID, those 7 that are the usual ones, Social Security card, what's the other one? It's passport, card, or passport, thank you, card or book, or in a Texas handgun license. Anything that's given to us by DPS or by those government, those 7. If you don't have one of those, you have to file a form when you go to vote and bring in another. That's a very long list, actually, another form of ID. And so I don't know that list because it's pretty long. But you have to file a reasonable impediment form, and it just states that you have a reasonable impediment of why you don't have those state Texas issued IDs or the passport of those. But yeah.
Can you bring the, I'm just thinking of, I'm just going to make something up. I moved here from Oklahoma. I registered to vote, but I haven't been able to get an appointment at the DMV to get my driver's license. So does my Oklahoma driver's license with the reasonable impediment affidavit count?
I would have to check that. I think from that list of 7, it has to be a state or federal one. The last one was your military ID. I just remembered. You can bring a military ID because it has your picture. It's a federal as well.
Seems like a lot of hoops to go through, that's for sure.
It is quite a bit. Actually, we just did a video yesterday trying to explain that more. We have great community partners, the Dallas Mavericks. They're very, very active in the community. And we had Champ, that mascot horse. He came in, brought his 7 comically large forms of ID, and we'll be pushing that video out, trying to explain what you need to vote.
Okay, lots of questions here. Bob wants to know if you can talk about poll watchers.
Yeah, so poll watchers are, and thanks, Bob, for the questions. Keep me on track. So poll watchers are, an increasing worry for a lot of poll workers. We saw a lot of hesitation in March from judges that have been judges for years, saying they didn't want to come back because of kind of the penalties that surround obstructing a poll watcher in their duties. So poll watchers very clearly are not poll workers. They're there strictly to observe, and they can be close enough to hear and see. You can't really hamper them from walking around at that poll location, but they're definitely not poll workers. You don't have to show them your ID. You don't have to do any of that. They can talk to the judge and the clerk, but only if they've seen some kind of irregularity. If they see an irregularity, then they can go and approach the judge and tell them what the irregularity was, and them and the judge can discuss it. But there's quite a few parameters around it. SB 1 changed quite a few things. It empowered them a little bit more. It put penalties on obstructing them, but it also did some other things, like now poll watchers need to be, they need to go through a training course with the Texas Secretary of State, and they get a certificate now. And they go through a training that outlines everything they can and can't do, who they can interact with, how close they can be to people actually voting, stuff like that. And so that was one of the benefits that came out of it, was kind of a uniformed training program. So to be a poll watcher, you actually have to be appointed by someone that's either, it's a candidate, a political party, a specific PAC. They fill out a form appointing that poll watcher and they sign it. The poll watcher then goes and gets their certification from the Secretary of State's office after they do the training. Then they bring both certifications, the appointment from their candidate and the certification, to the judge of whatever location they're going to be at, present them both. The judge sees it, they sign some forms, and that person can then act as a poll watcher. But anyone who calls up here on election day or doing early vote, we just try to make it very clear they are not a poll worker. They can only interact with the judge for irregularities. They cannot follow you and watch you as you vote. There's one exception to that law when you're at the voting machine actually voting, and is if you've asked the voting clerk or judge to help you or assist you in voting, then the poll watcher can also be there. But if you bring your own person to assist you, which you can, or if you aren't asking for assistance at all, they can be close enough to hear and see the process of the election or the election being conducted, but they cannot necessarily follow you in and watch what you do on the voting machine.
Yeah, the fear, of course, being this poll watcher intimidation, right? With
Yeah, poll watcher intimidation, and then if a judge is seen to obstruct, it's a penalty. It's a criminal penalty if a judge obstructs, whatever, quote unquote obstruct means.
Mhm.
But when you go into our polling locations, you'll see a lot of signs in all 3 languages, and they'll tell you who to call. If you're having an issue, you can talk to the judge about it. There's numbers for the Secretary of State, Federal Justice Department. Our office as well has a line that the judges can call. It's a judge's hotline. If they have an issue, they can call us directly. And, we have quite a few lawyers in the building. So
Great. Anne's asking, are poll working clerks paid for the hours they spend in training?
yes, so that was new. And thank you for asking that. Now let me highlight that. So you're not only paid for the hours of setting up before and taking down after, as well as that, the time you were working the poll, you're also paid for training. And there's 2 trainings. If you're a clerk, it's a 3-hour training. And they'll walk you through, setting everything up, how the voting equipment works, what you're supposed to be doing. It's a great training. And that's led by Laura Granado. She's a veteran. She's been here for years. She's a veteran of the training process, and she walks you through that. If you're a judge, it's an advanced training. It's about 5 hours. So yeah, we pay whatever the rate is. So whether you're a judge or a clerk for that training as well.
Great. Elaine Wyatt just pointed out that voter registration card or a utility bill will count with that reasonable impediment affidavit.
Yes, with your name and address on it. Yep.
Very good. Very good. Those are always good reminders, re-educating
Yeah.
people, right?
It is.
And one more question here before you move along. Is there a limit of poll watchers per location?
Yeah, 7. So, and not all at one time. You can have 2 there. So a candidate can appoint up to 7 per location. We rarely have that many, but there can only be 2 there at a time. And so let's say you're trying to schedule 12 hours of voting. You want some people to come in for 6 hours and then another person to kind of trade off and they can come in for 2 hours. So, but no more than 7 for each location, 2 at a time.
Now, is that per organization that is appointed, the poll watchers, or is that just total? Is that, I mean, you go to a poll, to a voting site, can there be no more than 2 poll watchers there, or is it up to 7?
Per candidate, I believe. So each candidate or PAC or a specific PAC or party can only appoint 2 for each. So it's 2 per candidate.
Great. Can I ask everybody to mute if you don't have a question? We're getting a lot of noise in the background. Great. Okay. All right. I'm looking at this list of questions and I think we've gone through the training. How are allocation of numbers of clerks per location determined?
Yeah, so that is actually through the person managing that's our election analyst, which is Petra Laird. She is fantastic, and she has that side of her brain that lets her use Excel at a very high level that I don't have. So it's a long process and it's a lot of very long meetings that I get to sit in on. And so we base it starts off with what type of election? Are we talking a runoff? Are we talking general? Is it going to be a popular election? Then we go on to look at previous turnout at those locations for similar. So right now we're using the previous governor's races. So 2018, 2014, so on, right? So we look at those previous governor races. We see the turnout at those locations previously. It's a different kind of gauge. We're also gauging how much interest is there, right? We have a lot of talks about the Beto O'Rourke effect and how, when he's on the ballot, we see kind of an increase in turnout, a pretty high turnout. So we're trying to kind of compensate for that. And then that, once we get a good number of how many people we're expecting at each location, we go down through each location and figure out how many people we're expecting. Then we take that number and go, okay, what's the average vote time for a ballot? Are there 30 things on the ballot? Is it going to take everybody 20 minutes to fill out proposition A through Z? You know, what's on there? And so we'll test it out ourselves and try to vote the ballot and see how long on average it takes us to do. Then we go, okay, if you have 10,000 people showing up at that location on election day, the ballot takes 2.5 minutes per person. How many poll books do we need to check them in? How many vote tabulators do we need? How many voting machines do we need? And so that estimation of the turnout on election day or an early vote, any given early vote day, kind of spreads out and tells us how much equipment we need there, how many workers, how many clerks per poll book, all the way down to how many tables and how many table covers. Just it's a really big lift. We have a great elections team and a great election analyst.
It's so important for people to understand everything that goes into putting on a well-run election, especially in a huge area like Dallas is. There's some more questions, but I want you to answer, go back to the little list of questions that Bob had sent you and talk to us a little bit about mail-in ballots, what happened during the primary with the rejection rates, what has been done to fix that, and what you think you're going to see in the November election.
Yeah, I'm glad to. So I started, I think, the very end of December, very beginning of January, and it was like drinking water from a fire hose. I think that's the phrase, right? So I got to do 4 elections kind of back to back to back to back, and SB1 had thrown a curveball. So, you know, there was a lot going on, but we got a lot of good experience. You know, I'm appreciative that happened. And so one of the biggest things that we had to get around to kind of deal with was SB1 and the requirement for identification on your mail-in applications and your ballot as well. And so originally as like most counties, we saw a very high, first you have to apply. I'm sorry if y'all don't, I'm just talking like everyone knows. First, for a mail-in ballot, you have to be over the age of 65. You have to be out of the county for the entire length of voting, including early voting and election day. There's also eligibility for people with disabilities and stuff like that. So if you meet one of those qualifications, then you can apply for a mail-in ballot. You would apply for a mail-in ballot. And we saw, like a lot of counties around the state of Texas, we saw a pretty high rejection rate. It was pretty scary at first. People were used to, a lot of people, one of the big issues is a lot of people will download, especially if they're not too tech savvy, they'll download that application and save it as an icon on their desktop, save it, they'll print off of several copies, and just every year that you have to apply every year. So every year they take out the same copy they've had, click on the same icon they had, and turn that in. This year, because of SB1, there was a requirement for your Texas driver's license or the last 4 digits of your Social Security. So at the out of the gate, we saw quite a few old forms coming to us that just didn't have the spot for that. And so we reach back out to them. There's a prescribed form from the Texas Secretary of State that we send it back and tell them exactly what was wrong with it and how they can correct it online or send us a new application that's properly filled out. And so, but it was still very, very high. So we, here in Dallas County, we worked with a local advertising firm and made some videos and some other things that we distributed across radio and television and digital ads, kind of explaining that, you know, you now have to use this new form. You have to include either your driver's license or the last 4 digits of the Social Security number, but please use both. Because the second big trouble that we saw is, let's say you registered to vote with your Social Security number. And then when you filled in your application form for your mail-in ballot, you used your driver's license. Those numbers don't sync up. And since those numbers didn't sync up, the state wouldn't allow us to go, this is the same address, this is the same name, this is the same everything. One's a Social Security, one's a driver's license. We can marry that, and we think that we know that's that person. The state said no, whatever they provided on their registration, they have to provide on their application. So we got a lot of people that didn't remember which one they provided. I mean, it was years ago. You could have registered a long time ago, and now you just turned 65 and you want to vote by mail and you don't remember what you put. So a lot of them were rejected because of that. And I mean, we knew who they were. we had their identity, their identification. They were registered. They just gave us the wrong number. So we pushed, when in doubt, fill both out. Just fill everything out on that form. Absolutely everything you can fill out, fill it out in case on that application, put both in case we only have one of your numbers when you register. But that was another big, so using old forms and, giving us the wrong identification those were the two big ones. The third was not signing a form is pretty big issue on a lot of our forms.
Yeah, I saw a TDP, I think it was developed of application that had highlighted, all those areas of concern. So people
And
make
so
sure to put that out.
Even after you do your application now, you still have to put those ID numbers. Once we send you your mail-in ballot, you still have to put those ID numbers and sign the envelope you send back to us. And that was another big step. People were like, well, I filled it out. I have it now. I don't need to put these numbers on this. Send it back to us. So we have now highlighted the section that asks for those numbers and have a square box around the signature as well. Yeah.
Very good. Can you tell us the dates, the important dates for applying for a mail-in ballot and when that ballot has to get back into the elections office?
Yes. So October 28th is your last day to apply, and that has to be in our office by October 28th, not postmarked. So we have to have your application for a mail ballot by October 28th. And I believe mail ballots are going to start going out. We send them in batches. So we start sending them to the people now that have already applied and everything. So yeah, October 28th is that deadline. The deadline to get your actual ballot back to us in the mail is November 8th, 7 p.m. on election day. If it is postmarked on November 8th before 7 p.m., the state gives us another day to accept them. So on November 9th, we'll be closely watching the mail, waiting for those to come in, and we check to make sure they're postmarked by election day, 7 p.m., and we can count those as well. So there's a bit of a grace period. We don't try to focus too much on that because just with the mail service the way it is currently, we just encourage everybody to do as early as possible. And so, yeah, so it is, the state says they must be in on election day by 7 p.m. Unless they're postmarked on election day by 7 p.m., then we have one more day to receive them.
And will there be a drop boxes?
So on election day, you can bring your mail ballot into this office, 1520 round table. The state doesn't allow for drop boxes. Most states do. Ours does not.
Yeah, that is so tragic. Okay, before I go to these next couple questions, I want you to finish up that last piece about election integrity. Talk to us about, making sure that equipment is 100% accurate, that people have confidence in the process, the testing, how public can see, view the process, and then how are we secure from any form of hacking?
Yeah, so this was something that, like I've said earlier, I am not the best with that math side or that tech side of things. I'm a communication person. I studied government. I got an MBA from UT. I took statistics and accounting, and when I was there, and I'm still a bit shaken up about it. But it's been a very interesting thing to see. So I've done a lot of elections. I've worked for a lot of elected officials, and I took this part, the security part, for granted. And so I've gotten a pretty good education on it so far that I've been here. We have a great logistics team, great hardware team. We just got a new hardware manager. He's coming from another tech company, and he's here now working with us. And so kind of starts with the machines. So the federal government has rules and regulations and has to certify any voting system that's used. The state of Texas goes a little bit further and says, unless the federal government and us have certified these voting systems, you can't use it. So that gives us two options: HART and what we use, ES&S. So ES&S has been around for about 40 years. They're used, I think, in every state, and they take security very seriously. So we use ES&S, and they do all of our software. They do our machines. And so there are three machines. There is the e-poll book. That's where you come in and you check in. That's where you give them your ID and they scan it under there. They print out your ballot. That out of the three machines is the only one that's ever connected or even has the capability to connect to the internet. The voting machine, which you actually put your ballot into and actually vote on, that doesn't even have the ability to ever connect to the internet. It doesn't have it. The vote tabulator, where you deposit your ballot when you're finished voting, that doesn't have any kind of way of connecting to the internet. They don't exist. But the check-in process has to, because we need to see, you can't come vote here and then try to go to the next location and the next location. Those all have to be updated in real time. And therefore, that's the only one that gets connected. Even that connection, though, is incredibly layered with security. We bring these things called, you might have seen them at our polling locations. They're called cradle points. They look like a router, like a wireless router, but they have a dozen antennas on them. Those are these big cradle points. They're a secure, specific type of internet. So we're not connecting the e-poll books to whatever wireless is in the building. We're connecting it through a secure, it has one use, and that's the one use. And we kind of go even above and beyond. We kind of diversify what carriers we use. So we use AT&T and Verizon. Those have the most coverage. So in case one isn't covering great in that area, we'll go with the other person covering in that area. So we're always updating each poll book. So you can't go, from one location to the other location and try to vote again. So that's the only piece. And that's only that e-poll book. All it has is your address, that information, and it allows us to print off your specific ballot. Then you would take that ballot and you put it into the voting machine. And that voting machine, like I said, doesn't connect to the internet. It's a secure machine. It also tabulates how many ballots it received. So we keep track of the e-poll book, how many ballots are printed, how many ballots are put in the voting machine, how many ballots are put in the tabulator. And the vote tabulator is that big black machine you see with the screen on it. It's where the clerk usually stands with your I voted stickers and hands them to you. You put that into that machine counts the number of ballots, and it drops it into a secure box. That vote tabulator, that final machine has about 10 locks on it. And it keeps its data on a USB stick that's under a lock and key and has a seal on top that, if tampered with, will say void on it. So you can't unlock and untamper that seal without everyone noticing. There's a backup USB stick as well, just kind of, so we have 2 USB sticks. That USB stick is what gets brought back to us at the end of the night with the actual results on it. And that travels with our judge and is it the sheriff's department back to us. And so every step is pretty secure. Only one machine is connected to the actual internet. And the vote tabulator has 10 locks on it, a USB, a backup USB. And those USBs are incredibly expensive because they're also encrypted, so they can't be tampered with as well. So yeah, so when I hear about any kind of vote tampering or any of those questions, it kind of pops into my mind just how many layers the machines and the systems are certified by the state and federal government. There's just a lot built in into every piece of that to make sure your vote is secure. Your information you give us is secure. We, at the end of the night, at the end of election night, we check each machine to make sure so we make sure that at every location, let's say the e-poll book printed 100 ballots. We make sure that the voting machine accepted 100 ballots, and we make sure the vote tabulator accepted 100 ballots. And we make sure all that math adds up, and we have to make that public on election night. That was another change in SB1, that we do that last night to make sure everything kind of matches up reporting.
That's great. There seems to be so many checks and balances, and even for the voter, I think when you can see your votes, your ballot on the screen, and then you see it again when it prints out. So when I've been doing presentations for new voters, and I said, don't turn it in if you think there's a mistake. You take it back to the clerk, and they void a bad ballot, and you can do it again. Make sure you
exactly. Exactly. Yep.
That's great. Okay, lots of questions here. Curbside voting. So Marcia says curbside voting has been problematic. I know of portable machines that didn't work, judges that didn't have appropriate markers to add phone numbers to the outdoor signage. Can you just, talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we try to provide just like any of the other stuff, we provide machines and clerks. We try to match it up to usage previously. So however many people use curbside previously, how many people we're expecting, we'll match how many voting machines we need. It looks like one of those hospital carts. It's the exact same voting machine, but on a cart. And there should be a number. We're gonna make the signage bigger. I know that it was previously on they had a few different ones depending on the location. So we have a 24/18 sign. We have a smaller sign depending on the parking situation, but we're going to try to get an even bigger sign as we're ordering right now to make sure they can see it. And I know it gets down to the minutely, like we provide, or we in each of the kits that we send out to each location for the judge to unpack and set up, we do try to provide a certain number, even down to the minute level of a certain number of pins and markers so they can write those numbers on. I know this year we're going to be having election inspectors. Those are going to be about 45 well-trained people that go around to about 10 locations each to make sure signage is up, the curbside voting thing is prominent, directional markers are there, and to check in on the judges. Those people will make about 3 routes. And so hopefully we're hoping to catch any kind of issues kind of out of the gate and get everyone caught up.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're doing that. Sometimes that, the parking lot just gets busy. It's hard to see where those signs are. If I'm pole grading, I always point them out, point out places to people because it sometimes just a matter of confusion. Okay. There's an important judicial race with a write-in candidate. Explain what the voter has to do when there's a write-in candidate.
So you'll get your ballot. You'll put into the voting machine, and if there is a write-in candidate, you'll see an option on your voting screen, and they'll let you input it there. So you should be able to see, hey, this is the Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party write-in candidate, and you'll have a choice at the bottom if there is a write-in candidate. And we are putting a list in every voting machine because it has those doors and it has the voting machine if you've seen one. We're going to put a list of the write-in candidates and their races in there so everyone is aware of the list of write-in candidates.
Okay, that's fantastic. Judge Stacey Williams is asking you to please clarify for vote by mail. The applications must be postmarked or received by October 28th.
The application is received by October 28th. We have to have it here. Okay. You can also come in and fill out an application here if you would like on October 28th. The ballot itself should be received on election day by 7 p.m., but we can accept it for one more day after the election, as long as it's postmarked. The ballot is postmarked by 7 p.m. on election day, but the application, it has to be here that day, October 28th.
Okay, very good. And then will you go through the process, say I decided to apply for a mail-in ballot. I got my mail-in ballot and then I went, I really want to go to the polling place and cast my ballot.
Yeah, and so you're going to take your mail-in ballot. So you got to take it. Go to the, your most convenient poll location, talk to the clerk or judge that's there, and you physically surrender your ballot to them. They take it, and then they're allowed to process a ballot for you from the print machine, but you have to bring it with you. We had a few people sadly show up on election day, said they never got their mail-in ballot. They just never received it, and they were trying to vote in person that day. And so what we did is we are allowed to print off another mail-in ballot if someone writes in and gives us an official notice saying they didn't get it. So we handed them their mail-in ballot. They then took their mail-in ballot, went to a local voting location, surrendered it, and voted there. But yeah, you have to surrender your ballot.
Okay, so there was a remedy for those people who said they didn't get it, because I did hear those stories as well.
Yes, and there was a few people. If it's early enough, we'll send you another ballot. I think we can send up to 3 mail ballots, and if you don't get it, you don't get the next one. And each ballot is marked to that specific one, so you can't request 3 and send in 3.
Right.
It's the first one we receive, and then it won't allow you to vote anymore after that.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you let us know early enough, we can send you another one. If not, you can come to our office and talk to us about not receiving your ballot, and we can figure it out.
Okay, good problem solving there. Okay, one more question here. Wanda's saying, still a little confused regarding signing the mail-in ballot envelope that you send back. Hard to know whether to sign above the sealed flap, on the envelope and the flap. It's hit or miss. Can you tell Wanda exactly where you sign?
Yeah, this is one of the, Texas is one of the most difficult states to vote in. And I think it's I don't know if y'all have seen a mail-in ballot. I have one somewhere, but I won't hold it up in front of y'all and torture you with it. But it is a wall of text. Both sides of that envelope that you send back to us, there's 2 full-length letters from prescribed by the Secretary of State. There's an abbreviated, instructions we send in it. It's just very hard to kind of read all of that. And the Secretary of State, it's a prescribed envelope. And so we only have so much room to work with on that envelope. So the print's very small too, which is, it's counterintuitive if you're asking for, if you're over 65, a voter with a disability, and you're asking for a mail-in ballot, it should be a little bit more readable and simple to do, but it's difficult. And so the instructions are sign over the flap. So the flap and the X on the line, you have to sign over the flap. So close it first, sign where the X is over the flap in the envelope. I think that was, hopefully that was clear. Yeah, you just want to, because some people will sign it first and then close the envelope over their signature. You need to close the envelope first, and it's just another check for security that you've signed it after you've closed it. So you've signed on both the flap and the actual envelope, the body of the envelope.
Yeah, I think so many things are both maddening and frustrating when you talk about the onerous processes that we go through, from registration all the way through casting a ballot in Texas. But then it's also encouraging to hear people like you talk about all the checks and balances and the ways that you work really hard to make sure that the voting process is safe and secure. So we definitely appreciate that. And I have gone through this list, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Nick covered all of the points that you had sent to him. We have answered every question that has come through on the chat box. Oops, one more. Thanks for the thanks for the clarification. A lot of thank yous for your presentation and for all the information you shared. And we hope, thumbs up from Bob, we hope that this is a smooth election season, and we appreciate all the work that you do. So if there are no other questions, more thank yous. Thank you. Great program.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So if there aren't any other questions, we will sign off, and I hope everybody has a great evening. Lena, do you have anything else to add? Oh, you're muted.
Just to remind people that we will be putting this on video on our YouTube channel. Tell your friends and neighbors who perhaps missed this, and emphasize how important it is that there was a lot of really good information, not only from our first presenters, the Sisters United Alliance, and then also from the Elections Department. It was very, very good.
Yep.
Let
And don't
people
give up
know.
your power. Yep. Don't give up your power. Get out there and vote, and get at least 10 more people to vote with you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Okay. Good night, everyone.